It's the Church of Jesus Christ.
There are a lot of forces at work to keep pro-life, pro-family Christians from voting, or at least to neutralize their votes. As journalist Megan Basham demonstrated in her recent book, Shepherds for Sale, there's a lot of left-wing money flowing into the evangelical world to move Christians away from clear issues like life, marriage, and gender, and point them to biblically murkier areas like environmentalism.
Secular left foundations funded by hard left billionaires, names you know, like George Soros, the Clinton Foundation, Mark Zuckerberg, have been funneling money into evangelical ministries in order to move that all-important evangelical vote on all manner of issues, from gun control to climate change to immigration policy. So you could really say that these are secular left organizations co-opting the church by creating front groups and AstroTurf campaigns. So I also spent a lot of time in the book tracking that money. One of the things you see is that issues that are biblical moral issues, things like the sanctity of life, things like the created order of male and female, the sanctity of marriage as between one man and one woman. When you have a pastor who is starting to define those things as political, while in turn taking political issues that are very debatable, like immigration or climate change legislation or gun control, issues that we can as Christians certainly debate in good faith and argue about, what God would see Christians do in terms of voting on those issues. But if they're defining those issues as gospel issues, those are one of the huge red flags when they're swapping those things out.
And so it's sneaky, it's underhanded, and we need to be aware of it and on alert for it. And so if you hear something from your pastor or a parachurch ministry that you think doesn't really add up, it may be because it's funded by one of these organizations. This is something that's been planned for a long, long time, decades in the making, and we're now seeing the fruit of this in so many churches that are walking away from biblical foundational truths.
The organization Evangelicals for Harris has tried to split the Christian vote by portraying a vote for Kamala Harris as a vote for civility, tolerance, and love. They did so even at Harris's convention, which featured a Planned Parenthood van on the premises that performed dozens of chemical abortions, sacrificing the children of Democrat attendees. Many faith leaders say this is no time for apathy, but rather is a crucial moment for biblical clarity and prioritization.
What we found is this: in 2020, over 25 million evangelicals, these are active church attendees, who were eligible to vote, were not registered to vote. That actually increased in 22 to 32 million evangelicals. And what we've seen is this: there is an apathy that has overtaken the church. It's started in the pulpit and it's worked into the pews.
Dr. Chris Leader is the president of Vote Your Faith, which is partnering with Coral Ridge this year.
Vote Your Faith came about back in 2018 as we began to look at the reality that so many evangelicals, active church attendees, were not registered to vote, and even those who were registered to vote were not actively engaging in the voting process. And so we started going after cultivating this audience of church attendees so that we could rally them to vote according to biblical foundations.
Chris Leader says that it's especially crucial this year with so many society-altering measures on the ballot.
So what we have this election season is a lack of interest on the left to show up and vote for top-level tickets. And so the left has put ballot initiatives in conservative and swing states in order to draw out their base and also to unravel the conservative progress that's been made in these states. And so we see that with abortion, we see it with the legalization of marijuana, and this is all intended to drive up the vote on the left.
In Florida, that especially means fighting Amendment 4 this year, a change to the Florida Constitution that would declare open season on unborn children. Lauren Cooley is the executive director of the Institute for Faith and Culture at Coral Ridge.
Here in Florida, 60% of those voting in the election need to approve it in order for it to be enshrined in the Florida Constitution. It would say that anyone can have an abortion, no age restrictions, parents don't have to give approval, they just have to be notified after the fact. There's no clear definition of what time or place or term that the abortion can take place or not take place, or what medical practitioner should be involved or shouldn't. So this is not something that once passed can be overturned. This goes into our founding documents as a state.
What we're seeing this year is the radicalization of abortion at the state level. And what we've seen over the past 2 years is many states take really great legal steps to protect life in the state. And so what's happening is the left has put these ballot initiatives in 11 states on the issue of abortion to drive up their turnout and voter turnout, but also to unravel what the legislatures and the governors have passed in those states to protect life. And so what we're doing is we're educating the electorate here in Florida on what this amendment actually is. It's an extreme abortion amendment that would literally allow abortion up until the moment of birth. It removes the parental rights and consent, and then it removes all of the safety measures for the woman, like allowing literally a receptionist at a doctor's office or a dental clinic to be able to perform this surgical abortion. And so our effort is really to educate the electorate here in Florida, specifically the faith community, so that they know what they're voting on come November 5th.
It's one example of a church partnership to make a tangible difference. Churches and individual Christians have often been dissuaded from involvement in election issues. But while we shouldn't be partisan, we also must not neglect the political sphere.
I think it's not only okay for Christians to be involved in politics. I think a fair and accurate reading of Scripture is that it's a calling and a responsibility and a duty. And if you go throughout the Bible, Old and New Testament, it is constantly taught that we are to be engaged civically and exercise our rights as a way to glorify God and share the gospel.
The voice of Bible-believing Christians is also in danger of being silenced because of widespread concerns about election security following 2020. But because of concerns expressed at the time, tremendous work has been done to ensure that your vote is secure.
One of the big lessons that we learned coming out of the 2020 election is that conservatives have to start banking their vote. Here's what I mean by that. We had discouraged individuals in 2020 from voting early or from voting by absentee ballot. This year, we need to swamp the vote. What I mean by that is we need to get evangelicals out in the masses, voting early, vote by absentee ballot if you need to vote by absentee ballot. If you're sure that you're going to vote on Election Day, make sure that you actually show up on Election Day to vote. But we need to bank the vote. I'm incredibly optimistic about what we're facing here in 2024. I think we have a monumental opportunity to course correct a lot of the negative decline that we've seen over the past 4 years. I believe that there's been great election integrity reforms that have taken place over the last really 2 years to protect votes. We want every legal vote to count once. We want to make it easy to vote but hard to cheat. And I believe that we've made great progress in that process.
Partnerships similar to the one between Vote Your Faith and Coral Ridge are the kinds of partnerships that can be replicated by churches of any size across the country to engage Christians on the key ballot issues that the Bible speaks clearly about.
I think that God has called us to participate in the public square and participate in every sphere of culture. There's a lot of different reasons why Christians may not participate, whether they're discouraged and they think their vote and their voice doesn't count, or they're under bad preaching, bad teaching that tells them that if it's not specifically gospel-oriented, it's not evangelical-oriented, then there's no reason to participate. I disagree. I think the Bible is clear. We're called to be a part of the civic process, to be a part of shaping culture, and voting is really being a good steward of this excellent resource God has given us, which is to live in such a great country.